All right, so today we're really diving deep. We're tackling this whole idea of finding purpose in life. And I got to say, the material you sent over is it's pretty thought-provoking, especially that article, the one about finding purpose through observation and stories.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, just the concept of homework for life, like right off the bat, that got me thinking.
That's a real attention grabber for sure.
Yeah, and it feels like a good place to, well, good place to start. Before we get too far,
Mhm.
I think we should probably lay out, what we're hoping to accomplish with this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this article, right? And it's all about finding purpose, but not in that like traditional sense of, what's my one true calling or whatever.
Right, right. It's not about that aha moment where everything suddenly clicks into place.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, thank goodness for that because I feel like that whole idea puts so much pressure on people.
It does. It creates this false sense of urgency, like there's this one perfect path out there, and if you don't find it, you've somehow failed.
Yeah, or like you're just wandering aimlessly through life. It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It is, but this article, it takes a much more grounded and I think ultimately more empowering approach.
So what would you say is the core message, the main takeaway?
I'd say it's about recognizing that purpose isn't some static endpoint, it's an ongoing process.
Okay, I like that. So it's not about finding the answer, it's about engaging in the question.
Exactly. And a big part of that engagement involves paying attention, being present, and noticing the meaning that already exists in our everyday lives.
Okay, so that's where the observation piece comes in.
Exactly.
And the article has some really practical tips on how to cultivate that skill of observation, right?
Yeah, things like slowing down, really taking the time to notice the details of your surroundings.
It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot.
Yes, and then actually speaking your observations out loud, which can help solidify them in your mind.
Ooh, I like that. I'm gonna try that.
It's a simple but effective technique.
Yeah, because I think we often just kind of go through our days, heads down, focus on the next task, and we miss so much of what's happening around us.
We do. We miss those little micro stories that make up the fabric of our lives.
Micro stories, I like that. Can you give me an example? Like, what would a micro story look like?
Sure. So the article actually uses the example of noticing a bird's nest
Okay.
and how that simple observation can spark all these thoughts about resilience, about creativity, about the cycles of nature.
Wow, yeah, I see what you mean. It's like taking something ordinary and finding the extraordinary within it.
Exactly. And that's what makes observation so powerful. It allows us to see the world with fresh eyes, to find meaning in the seemingly mundane.
It's like turning up the volume on life,
Yeah.
Like suddenly you're noticing all these details you never would have seen before.
And then the article takes it a step further and talks about how we can weave those observations into actual stories.
Okay, so how does that work? How do we go from noticing a bird's nest to telling a story about it?
Well, our brains are naturally wired for storytelling, right? We're constantly looking for patterns, making connections, trying to make sense of the world around us.
Right.
So when we start paying attention to those micro stories, those little details and observations, we're essentially gathering the raw material for meaning making.
It's like we're becoming the authors of our own lives.
Exactly. And the act of storytelling itself can be incredibly powerful. When we craft narratives from our experiences, we're not just passively recounting events, we're actively shaping them, giving them meaning.
And it's not about writing a novel or anything. It's just about finding those threads of meaning in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got observation, we've got storytelling. What else does this article suggest for tapping into purpose?
Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah, the article emphasizes the importance of gratitude lists.
Oh, like writing down things you're grateful for.
Exactly. Ideally, 5 things every day.
5 things every day, huh? So how does that tie into purpose?
Well, when we intentionally focus on what we're grateful for, we're not just boosting our mood, we're actually revealing our values.
Our values.
Yeah, think about it. The things we appreciate, whether it's a supportive friend or a sunny day or a delicious meal, they all reflect what matters most to us.
Okay, I see what you mean.
hmm
So gratitude isn't just about feeling good. It's about understanding what makes us tick.
Exactly. And once we know what our values are, we can start incorporating them more intentionally into our lives.
So it's like gratitude becomes a compass, guiding us toward the life we want to create.
I love that analogy. A compass guiding us toward a purposeful life.
So let's talk about homework for life. We touched on it at the beginning, but
Ah, yes, that's where all these threads come together.
okay, so break it down for us. What exactly is it and how does it work?
So, homework for life is essentially a practice of mindful observation with the intention of finding stories.
Okay, so it's like taking those observation skills we talked about and putting them into action.
Exactly. The assignment is simple. Every day, you write down 3 observations, 3 things you notice that strike you as potentially story-worthy.
Story-worthy.
Right, anything that catches your attention, anything that makes you pause and think, there's a story there.
So it could be anything, really. Like a conversation you overhear, a funny interaction, or...
Anything, really. It could be something beautiful, something strange, something that makes you laugh, something that makes you think.
Okay, and then what? What do you do with these observations once you've written them down?
Well, you keep a record of them. A journal, a notebook, a file on your computer, whatever works for you.
And the idea is that over time, as you accumulate these observations,
Patterns emerge.
you start to see connections, recurring themes, things that you wouldn't have noticed if you weren't actively paying attention.
Exactly. It's like creating a tapestry of your life, one observation at a time.
So it's not just about finding purpose in the big moments. It's about recognizing the potential for purpose in every single day.
Exactly. And that's what I find so inspiring about this approach.
I think I'm starting to see how this all ties together. It's like we're building this toolkit for finding purpose, we're sharpening our observation skills, honing our storytelling abilities, and cultivating an attitude of gratitude.
And through those practices, we're not just discovering purpose, we're creating it.
Okay, that's amazing. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. But before we wrap up, is there anything else from the article that you think is important to highlight?
You know, I think the article makes a really crucial point about the fluidity of purpose.
Fluidity.
Yeah, it emphasizes that our purpose isn't fixed. It evolves over time as we grow and change.
That makes sense. I mean, the things that mattered to me 10 years ago aren't necessarily the things that matter to me now.
Exactly. And the same will be true 10 years from now. So it's important to be open to that evolution, to embrace the idea that purpose is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Okay, I love that. I love the idea that purpose is something we can continually discover and rediscover throughout our lives.
And the tools we've talked about today, observation, storytelling, gratitude, they can help us navigate those shifts and changes with more grace and intention.
So it's not about finding that one perfect path. It's about being present, paying attention, and trusting that the path will reveal itself as we go.
Beautifully said.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. This has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've explored the power of observation, the magic of storytelling, the importance of gratitude, and this really cool idea of homework for life. And, I think the big takeaway for me is that purpose isn't something we find, it's something we cultivate.
And it's something that's available to all of us, right here, right now, in the everyday moments of our lives.
Exactly. So to our listeners, as you go about your day-to-day, I challenge you to think about those 3 potentially story-worthy moments.
What will you notice? What stories will you uncover? What meaning will you create?
Pay attention, and you might be surprised by what you discover.
Enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.